When my son was in high school, the Xbox disappeared from our house for a year and a half. I want to explain to you why it disappeared for a year and a half. I found that the more my son was playing video games, the more irritable he would become and the more selfish he would become. And I was doing the whole reactive parenting thing where I would get mad and take it away and then give it back and take it away. And that went on for several years. And it finally got to the point when he was in 10th grade, I said, you know what? Enough is enough. The Xbox is leaving the house. And I took it out of the house and he would ask me for it sometimes and I would just say it's gone. And then eventually he stopped asking. Now, why did I take it away for a year and a half? Well, that was just kind of an arbitrary number. I just didn't feel that he was ready to handle it yet. And he did get it back in 12th grade when his brain was more developed and he was more able to handle it and it wasn't affecting his behavior as it had been before. You know, it's very common for kids with ADHD to become more emotionally dysregulated due to their excessive gaming. I'm sure many of you have found from your own experience that the more your child is on video games, the more it affects their mood or their behavior. I will tell you, my son's psychiatrist told me once that she was able to not raise kids' medication sometimes by keeping them away from violent video games, and that did not surprise me at all. Often, parents of kids with ADHD think that their child has an addiction to video games when it is not an addiction they have. Rather, the gaming just really affects them and they might be using it compulsively. The reason I want to explain this is because I believe the word addiction is thrown around a little too liberally in our society, and gaming addiction looks very different than what I'm describing with my son. I am not suggesting that anybody removes video games from their house like I did. However, I often find kids with ADHD are permitted to game excessively, and often video games are treated as an entitlement rather than something that is earned for meeting daily expectations at home. So here are my suggestions if you feel that video games are affecting your child's mood or behavior. Number one, and this is particularly for younger kids, keep them away from violent video games or games that are morally questionable. When I say morally questionable, I'm talking about games like Grand Theft Auto, where they can go around and kill people, or there's prostitution in them, those kind of things. Number two, I want to tell you the American Academy of Pediatrics recommended screen time for kids. For weekdays, it's no more than 1 hour, and on weekend days, no more than 2 hours. Now, obviously, a lot of parents do not follow this, and I don't think that that's a problem, but I just wanted to give you a framework to understand what is recommended. Number three, have an agreement of expectations in place for when they're gaming. So for example, if getting off the video game and transitioning away from it is a problem, well, I teach a strategy for that in the Executive Function Crash Course series, which is part of the ADHD Dude membership site. I also suggest to families that requiring the child to use a strategy I teach in that webinar is required if they're going to play video games. The strategy that I'm talking about here is using an analog clock to see time in unit volume and visually see a transition in time coming up. You cannot do this with a kitchen timer. You cannot do this with a stopwatch. You cannot do it with the red countdown timer. It has to be this analog clock that will help them not only learn how to feel time, but transition away from video games without a fight. I will tell you, out of all the strategies I teach, this is one that parents are often most surprised has such a big impact on their kids when they require them to use it. The last one is have daily expectations in place for earning video games. So I typically suggest for families, split the expectations in half between behavior at home and helping around the house at home. The number of expectations varies based on the child's age. For younger elementary school kids, I suggest 2 daily expectations, and as they get older, we can increase it. For older kids, such as those in middle or high school, I suggest 6 daily expectations that they have to meet daily to earn their video game time. We want to make these expectations realistic and achievable because we do want to set kids up for success. I have a webinar about this as well in the ADHD Dude membership site. So if you feel that your child's behavior is affected by how much they're gaming, don't do the reactive parenting thing like I did for years. Instead, put strategies in place, put expectations in place for earning video game time, and I think you'll see it'll make a tremendous difference. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.